G'day guys and welcome back to Cookie's Critters. So I'm here with my original wingman Rex and Chewbacca, and today we're going to have a discussion about sand and impaction. So guys, if you are new to this channel, please like and subscribe to the channel, turn on those post notifications, and we'll see you in a minute. The first thing that we want to discuss is their natural habitat. Now, as the name implies, a central bearded dragon does come from Central Australia. So their habitat and their natural environment is very dry, it's hot, and it's harsh. So the substrate that these guys are found on is a combination of red clay, decomposing leaf litter, bark, and decaying trees. For these guys here, high heat is super critical, absolute must. And when we're talking high heat, we're talking 38 to 40 degrees. So the reason for their high temperature is to drive their appetite, to boost their metabolism, and to help digest that food through, out the other end, as fecal matter. Now in the wild, these guys aren't gonna have a clean little plastic tub or a nice little neat bowl to eat their salads and to eat their feeder insects from. So they do have a risk of ingesting some loose substrate along the way. But so after these guys have eaten, they will always go to a nice, clear, sunny space and soak up that heat. So the risk associated with sand and impaction here in captivity is a combination of low heat and poor husbandry techniques. So I commonly see it on social media where people have in the past been given the wrong advice and their temperatures are far too low. And I'm talking temperatures around the 28 to 32 degree mark. Now, obviously, if these guys are eating in their enclosure, they're gobbling up their little crickets or woodies, and they're getting some sand in their intestine along the way, that low heat is going to create an issue with impaction, obviously, because they haven't got the heat to drive through that sand. So the issue I have with sand as a substrate is people given the advice and using the wrong type of sand. So you might just be thinking, well, sand is sand, aren't they all the same?
No, 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 no.
And the simple answer is they're not. There are products on the market, and unfortunately pet stores do stock them, that are very high in calcium. Now, this becomes an issue when that calcium-based sand gets wet. It gets very clumpy and sticky, almost like a clag glue, like the craft glue that you get your kids to, do some work at school with. So obviously, if this sand that's rich in calcium gets wet and gets into our Beardie's intestine, it's going to get sticky, it's going to get blocked, it's going to cause constipation, and evidently, they're going to end up with impaction.
Yeah, but what is the right kind of sand?
So there's a few choices that you can use when it comes to a good, appropriate sand for a bearded dragon. Now, one of those is you could go to a pet store and pay the premium and get the red Reptile sand, which for these guys is great. My only issue with it is the price tag that's associated with it, and it can potentially stain their tummy and stain their little hands, and you pick them up, put them on your shoulder, and you end up with red marks all over you. So the next option is my personal preference, and I also know it's a personal preference for a lot of the breeders that I associate with, and that is a washed play sand from a hardware store. So the trick is, guys, you want to be looking for exactly that, washed play sand. I'm going to put it right there, washed play sand. You don't want to be getting a fine plaster of sand or anything like that. $8, 20 kilos, washed play sand. Washed play sand. So there's a bit of a trick when it comes to the washed play sand. I like to wet the sand before I put it into the enclosure, and I allow the heat lights to actually dry it, creating a crust, a hard layer on top, so that way it's not loose and crumbly. This way the bearded dragon can actually scratch around and do what it does in the wild, because once again, in the wild, they will burrow. So these guys will burrow for a few reasons. One of those is to get away from predators, feral cats, dogs, large birds. That 10 to 20 centimeters subsoil will actually give them insulation. Now we already know that the summer in the desert is excruciatingly hot. Now the opposite side to that is they have blisteringly cold winters. As bearded dragons are cold-blooded, they do rely on the sun and the heat to sustain life, to drive their metabolism and to eat. Now during winter they do what's called brumation, and we're going to discuss that in a later video, but essentially for now it's a sleep period, like a bear's brew, hibernation. Grrr. Now they can sleep anywhere from 3 to 5 months. One of my girls, she usually sleeps about 5 to 6 months of the year. When the weather is appropriate and the temperatures start warming up and the humidity starts to increase, these guys will wake out of their brumation cycle, start to eat and start to reproduce. So the last reason why bearded dragons burrow is to create a den, a nesting place for the females to lay their eggs. Now if these females did lay their clutch up on the surface, for one, the eggs would dry out, and the second issue is that other reptiles, including bearded dragons, would come and prey on these eggs and use it as part of their diet. So for these reasons that I've just discussed, if they didn't burrow, if they didn't have a loose substrate soil in the wild, their circle of life would finish. Now you're probably sitting there just thinking, well, you know, these guys in the wild only live 2 to 3 years and then they pass away. Now, their mortality isn't based on impaction. The high risk of mortality for a bearded dragon in the wild is actually predation. So I've got a female in one of the enclosures up the top here who's heavily gravid, and I'm actually expecting her to lay today. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've put a lay box in there with a nice deep moist base of sand, so that way she can dig and bury her eggs. So guys, if I haven't managed to convince you to use sand, then I would actually still ask you to try it out. Now, if you have any fears and concerns based around sand and impaction, an idea to consider is to pull the bearded dragon out and pop them into an enclosure, a separate tub, during their feeding, especially with the feeder insects. This way we'll limit the sand ingestion. So guys, while we're talking about impaction, I will quickly touch on it. If your little dude or your little dudette is eating a lot, but nothing's passing out the other end, you want to get them down to a reptile vet as soon as possible. Pronto. Get them down there, get them seen, get them treated, because worst case scenario, impaction does require surgery. So guys, the takeaway points from this whole video is sand is great, crank up your heat, and use the right sand. Now if you follow these 2 simple rules, you're not going to have a risk of impaction and your beardie's going to have a healthy and happy life. Now guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you found it informative and educational. If you want to leave some comments down below, please do, much appreciated. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, turn on those post notifications, and as always guys, if you've got them, keep your beard treated and your beardie heated.